Welcome to the Half Geek Half Human podcast, where we explore the intersections of technology, business, and life. This podcast is powered by Atiba, a custom software and IT services company in Nashville, Tennessee. Now to your hosts, Anna Kate Ross and Joey Baggett.
All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Half Geek Half Human podcast. Glad to have you here today. Our guest today is Michael Epps Utley. He is a self-described serotonin junkie and the founder of GoEpps Digital Marketing here in Nashville, Tennessee. He's an avid hiker and cyclist. He's already completed 10% of the Appalachian Trail and cycled across multiple states. He's deeply involved in the local community of East Nashville, serving on many advisory boards and boards of directors for STEM education and children's organizations. And we're excited to have you on the show today. Michael, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks so much. It's such a great connection to do this together. Atiba and GoEpps have been neighbors in Nashville and have kind of circled each other over the years and worked together on some projects recently. And so we're thrilled to get to represent GoEpps on your podcast today. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's really good to have you, and really want to kind of just start with just your background. So GoEpps is your company. Obviously, there's some history. Your middle name is Epps. So I want to kind of explore that. So I kind of just would like to start with your origin story. So who is Michael Epps Utley? And I guess what kind of gives you authority to talk on digital marketing and AI?
Yeah, that's great. I hope something in this is interesting to people. For me, it's been very interesting. It's been my entire life. But yeah, I'm from Tennessee. I grew up in West Tennessee, went to undergrad, University of Tennessee, Knoxville, got a degree in creative writing. And what I wanted to do was go into higher education and eventually end up with a PhD in history. And so I came to graduate school at Vanderbilt and was getting a degree through the Divinity School in church history. I was interested in sort of philosophy and world religions and Christianity. And so I studied that. And during that process, I realized that my type of energy was better suited to the business world than the academic environment. I had this moment where I saw two of my professors pass each other in the hallway. They were two of my favorite people in the world, and they didn't even see each other. They didn't even acknowledge each other. And I thought, wow, this is sort of a solo existence up here for these guys in this crow's nest on, Vanderbilt campus, just sitting up here working on their next book and maybe see a student or two. And I just wanted to be around people. And so when I got out of school, my plan B became my plan A. It was to work in the publishing industry. So I started working in book publishing. I was editing books for about 6 weeks. And somebody came around and said, hey, would you consider taking a promotion? Have you ever thought about doing sales? And there was nothing further from my imagination than me doing sales. And I talked to the publishing house founder that I was working in. This was, I had gotten married, and my wife and I had come to Nashville to go to Vanderbilt, and we'd gone through Vanderbilt and bought our first house, having our first kids, and we've got 4 boys now. And it was just a time of a lot of like, what am I doing? Where am I going with all this? But I knew that just the pace and the energy of what the sales and marketing people were doing felt right. There was something about it. I didn't understand that business was my destiny and my creative outlet when I was in my liberal arts education, but it became that. And through just being around my father and him, he was a lawyer, and seeing him build a small business, I had this sort of feeling of unfinished work to do and felt that I should start a company. And I worked for other people for about 12 years doing digital marketing. So I've been doing digital marketing purely as my main career for 25 years. And it was just this gnawing feeling that I should be starting something entrepreneurial and new. And so I had jobs for some in town, always around sort of written material and a lot of it around printed material. And that just very early became more digitally oriented. But then the marketing and the sales crowd, that was just kind of where the energy was. And so ended up running marketing for companies like magazines.com and doing a lot of work with like a little startup operation inside of Lifeway, a 100-year-old Christian publishing company. But they had this unit called the e-business group. And our job was to dream up new revenue sources using the internet. And so I could not have had a better combination of my weird background of divinity school and entrepreneurship and content and being passionate about books and the written word and sort of the legacy of content production and what it means to then go on and develop essentially a content agency and an SEO agency and to have that all come together. So yeah, it was a weird journey and a lot of ups and downs. Getting started wasn't easy. There was a huge failure. There was a huge setback and it was just absolutely devastating. And so it was, the origin story is choppy at best. But here we are, successfully growing and scaling up, now multi-million dollar digital marketing shop. And so, but it was hard every step of the way.
So what was I guess the moment in your career, because you got about, I'm just going to split it right in half. So 12 and a half years working for other companies, working for other agencies, 12 and a half years running GoEpps. So somewhere right there in the middle, there was a moment that you're just like, you know what, I've got to get out of this corporate world. I've got to go start my own thing. What was that? What led you to that?
It's interesting. So the choppiness, I guess, is where it's actually interesting. So instead of burying the lead, I'll give you the headline first. Massive, devastating failure led to success. That's sort of where this story goes. And it wasn't so much an impatience or a loss of interest in the corporate environment. It was actually that I just felt slowed down. I had jobs that I wanted to get, and I was told, "Oh, you're too young. We're going to have older people reporting to you. That doesn't sound cultural fit." And I thought, "Man, this is all slow." And I'm expecting to see a dinosaur walk through here any minute. And it was just the culture of everything was just so sluggish that I just felt a compulsion to go build my own machine. And so around 2008, I left my last job at that time, running marketing for another company, and decided I was going to start my own shop. And it was the year the banking crisis hit. And so I had 6 months of work, website projects lined up. And then in one day, the phone rang like 3 or 4 times, and every one of them was a cancel. Like, hey, we're not going to sign. We were about to sign the contract. We're not going to. Something's going on with the banks. And we were going into winter, and the HVAC went out of the house. We lived in the house that we live in now, 2008, East Nashville. Winter, the HVAC went out, and I'm just like, the phone's been ringing. It's all been bad news. And I was devastated. Failure was so hard. And so I decided it's time to take a job. I'm not ready for this. And so during that time, I was really questioning myself. So I took a job with a startup in DC, moved the family up there, borrowed a space heater to keep us get through the winter. It's just everything about you can just imagine those times when you're at the bottom of the bottom, just so devastating. Every little thing is just heartbreaking. And it was just the HVAC going. I'll never forget that. I still don't like being in that room of the house that I was in. It's like a guest room now. I just don't like to go in there. It was so painful.
Yeah.
But moved the family up to DC, took a job with a startup, and that was the beginning of realizing that I wasn't ready before. And there were really about 3 different insights that came together that led to the next run at things. Number one was I didn't have the maturity to understand what it meant to be on the hook for performance at the end of the day, and that to serve clients, you have to have that. You have to put yourself in their shoes and be ready to do whatever needs to be done to get things working for them. So that was number one. Number two was I had the opportunity for my time up in the DC area. I worked for the startup and then with an agency for 2 years. That 2 years with that agency was absolutely some of the most valuable time. So picking up those skills while I was out on somebody else's dime and doing good work, doing really good work, but also collecting little tokens of this is what I need and this is the piece I was missing and this is what I was not understanding. And then the third piece was my own good to great moment. In 2012, a friend said, "Hey, you know a lot about SEO. Could you put together a package and let me offer it to some of my clients?" And the light bulb went off for me. Recurring revenue. Recurring revenue trumps project based businesses every day. And so that became this massive re energizing force of energy that just came up and through me. And it became a sort of a fully realized SEO program that immediately started selling. And so then a friend heard about it. And this is where it really turns a corner. A friend heard, "Hey, I heard you're doing SEO. Can you look at our website?" I reviewed the website, and they stopped me halfway through the presentation and said, "What would it take for you to really impact our business?" And so I went back and did the math, and I said, $284,000, and I can grow you 20% next year. And they said, great, let's do it. And so there I am with a day job, working for this other agency that I loved and was very active and engaged there. And then suddenly I'm taking freelance writers in Nashville and promoting them to be project team leaders and built a team remotely. And that was the start of the company. We launched out of a side hustle that became overwhelming and just had to take my full time. And so year two of this reboot, after this good to great moment, I was the second employee and went on full time with my own company. And since then, it's just been up, and we've doubled revenues, I guess, three times since then, and couldn't be more excited. But man, the failure, and the pieces I picked up after that, those were all critical, and there was no way to success except through those failures.
That's awesome, man. And such a cool story too. Just I think that's almost the American dream, and just like the story of people, really using rock bottom as a great foundation to build something on. I have one more quick question, and then I'm gonna pass over to Anna Kate, because Anna Kate's our digital marketing, kind of historian and expert at Atiba. Sorry, I just threw you under the bus there, Anna Kate. But so I'm gonna let her ask some of those questions. But you mentioned a token, and we had a call earlier this week, and at one point in time, I thought you had a cigar in your hand. You're kind of like flicking it around, and I was like, "What does this guy do? He's got a cigar like inside." So can you tell us about your token there before we move on?
This is funny. I do have a master's in church history. I'm very much a reader of literature. I love things like Lord of the Rings and Star Wars and fantasy and talismans and objects of power. And recently, my wife and I were visiting her father and walking through a commercial building that he has that had significant damage. And there was this piece of copper pipe, and the whole place was devastated. I don't know if I can get that close enough to the camera here, but there's a little crack in there. Well, that little crack cost $30,000. And we were in this phase with GoEpps of sort of getting things dialed in and leveling up, because when you go from being a startup to a scale up, there's a lot of hard decisions that you have to work through. There's just a lot of pain and a lot of, oh, we thought this, but now that we've got some people speaking into what we're doing, we're actually realizing, oh, that was wrong, or that our thinking on that was broken. And also just accountability and challenging people, and developing a system where they see themselves as part of something bigger, and taking folks who are coming out of college right now and helping them to understand what it means to be part of a family where everybody's got to work very closely together and depend on one another. Mistakes have consequences, and problems that are client facing are often so damaging, and we can't really fix that. And so that was my little visual to this new team that I was building and expanding, to say, hey, the devil's in the details, and we're going to get really good at the small things, and we're going to hear the yellow flags before they become red flags. We're going to react to them aggressively, and we're going to become one of the best companies in the world for customer service and client retention. And so that project-based revenue, it's been supercharged by something I didn't really value. And that was our client retention numbers are just really high. And so now that I've kind of measured that a little bit better and I understand it better, it's like almost like I dodged a bullet. Like all the times that we've just retained so well, I'm really thankful for them. But I want to institutionalize and operationalize it. And so I've been thinking about that and talking about that a lot over the last 6 months. And so when I saw this, it became my new favorite object.
Oh, I love that. Kind of inspires your thinking, and it seems really motivating too. Well, let's talk about the marketing side of things, and just kind of the work that you do for your clients. And I also, just while you were speaking there, I was thinking like the recurring revenue. Maybe sometimes that's not the most exciting work that you're doing. It's not like the new shiny penny, but it can be such great bread and butter. It can help you generate these wonderful relationships with your customers for many years. I love hearing about that. It just seems like a great core of your business. So first of all, GoEpps, or go ahead. I'll let you respond to that.
No, that's it. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, totally.
So before we get too far into this, what would you say sets GoEpps apart? How do you describe yourself or your company?
Yeah, I think something is different about us. Something that usually comes up in the beginning of a conversation. A lot of folks we talk to, they show up and it's usually small, medium businesses, anywhere from 5 to quarter of a billion. Like we work with a lot of different size companies. So healthcare networks that are adding clinics and, they decided, hey, we're big on the East Coast. We're going to go West and we're adding California and West Coast. So we work with a lot of different types of companies. So because so many different types of conversations happen, generally the first differentiator for us to sort of get people dialed into who we are and what we're doing is we're sort of the company that starts in a spreadsheet and works backwards to Photoshop, as opposed to starting in Photoshop and then ending up with a spreadsheet and saying, all right, now what do we do? What that looks like in more practical terms is we're not a branding agency, we're a performance marketing agency. And so a lot of times clients will come to us after they've been working with a branding agency that has performance marketing agency services available as an add-on, but they're not really strong or qualified in those areas. We're the people to talk to after you've got your logo figured out. We don't want to design logos. We build websites, but sometimes if a website project is not a good fit for us, we'll send it to someone who can do it for the client at a better price. Or if it's got too much sophistication, we'll send it to a TIBA, for example, and just say, hey, this is out of our scope. This isn't where we're the best at what we do. But then once it gets into spreadsheet world, advertising campaigns, SEO, inbound content marketing, social media content publishing as an add-on to boost performance of a content program for SEO. Those are the things where we get really excited because we're able to calculate against ROI. And so, yeah, that's kind of the biggest piece of like, who are we? What's different? If there was anything that kind of sets us apart, separate from that, and makes us unique or special, I would just say that we're really focused on what the client needs, even sometimes before they know it. A lot of times they're just looking for somebody to make a problem go away. But we see that what they need is just a steady partner who can guide the performance of what they're doing. A lot of times, if it's not performance they want, but just insight, we can offer coaching that gives them an awareness of what's happening in the industry to avoid problems. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know how much of that is actually really, really at the end of the day special. I think there are a lot of good companies doing good work. I think we're special in the ways that we're not trying to be special. Steady, diligent, focused on the stuff that's not very sexy. And that's been a good business for us.
Yeah, that's really cool. Having gotten into this and getting your first big break, it sounds like with that $284,000 contract back 12 or 13 years ago, it sounds like that was pretty SEO focused. How has the world of SEO changed from then until now?
Yeah, I think SEO has been surprisingly consistent in some ways, and really overdue for a real market shift. And I think AI is now that sort of reset of the table. It has been surprising to me how dominant and consistent a player Google has been, and how, frankly, I don't really feel that they've served organic content publishers very well. And so, Malcolm X, the chickens come home to roost. At some point there's a consequence. It's like, whoa, the universe isn't Google. Okay, what's going to happen here? Wow, they really kind of stepped in it with their response to Google or to AI, to Chat GPT. They didn't really come back with, oh, we've got something awesome in the can that we're happy to share as well. Here's a great test. It was a little bit of a Tesla broken window on stage moment for Google after they tried to sort of come back in the conversation with Chat GPT. So yeah, I've been surprised at how Google has been dominant without as much innovation as we would expect. But something that's also been consistent is the steady growth of investment of companies to publish. And so yeah, those are some of the things that have not changed, is that consistency and primacy of Google, and the steadiness and consistency of more investment in SEO, especially around content, but also just best practices SEO. What has changed, it's been kind of surprising, is the complexity of the search results page. And I don't think we as SEOs give enough value to that page. We kind of focus on what's on our side of the equation and not so much what's on the search results page. And so that's been a very dynamic thing that has evolved a lot over the years. That's really created a lot of freshness of tactics and re-engaging the market at different times. Whether it's AMP or schema or any sort of trends that are coming or new tools that Google's offering, or even now just them offering, more of a local ads focus for companies to get in and just, hey, we just want to show up in the Maps 3-pack. How do we just do that? Yeah, so the amount of change and turnover in those pages without actually adding a lot of value to publishers, adding a lot of value to Google, but not adding a lot of new valuable direction or structure for publishers. That's something I think I've seen a lot of turnover in.
Yeah, that's interesting. The value to publishers makes me think of how Google's lack of a social network, having something that can surface content that's performing organically well on its own and then have a good paid counterpart to go along with that. There was the Google Plus generation there for a little while, but that didn't go very far.
Google Plus significantly outperformed the growth of all other existing social platforms when it was launched. And what that means is everyone whose job is what all of us on this call do had everybody sign up for stuff and started talking about it. And it wasn't a good platform. It wasn't a good product. I always thought that what they were trying to do was develop a foothold for essentially authorship on the internet. I thought they were fighting the fight of identifying particular sources of content with authors who could be essentially individuals who could have a reputation and eventually sort of an approved, sort of a Google blue check, so to speak. And so I was surprised that they didn't just dial back on that concept and use that platform for that purpose. I think if they had chosen to use that as a way to finally overcome the problem of duplicate content just through authorship, it could have been useful, but they pulled the plug on it and didn't see the benefit that would be out there for just this community of people who are trying to market on the internet. But it is what it is. They were thinking bigger and wanting to go against Facebook or something with it. I don't know why.
Yeah, that's interesting. I forgot about the authorship piece of it. I forget what it was called, but you could become certified as your to take control of your content.
Yeah, I really thought that was a given at that time. I was surprised they gave up so fast.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so you mentioned AI and Chat GPT and some of these new tools that are coming out there. Can you tell us some of the things that how you're using Chat GPT for good? How maybe, I think a lot of people the conversation is this is a threat in a lot of ways, especially in like a marketing, a content, a communications perspective, but I don't necessarily see it that way. And these, we have to adapt with these tools as they come along and figure out how to use them. What are some ways that your agency is using AI right now?
Yeah, I was talking to another agency owner, and we joked that the English majors were all lining up out on Korean War Vets Bridge out here below us to jump off with the advent of Chat GPT. And I actually don't think that's the case. There are two sort of beliefs that I have about the way the universe works that make me think that ChatGPT is going to play out in a very different way. So, to answer more practically first, the way we're using it is we're finding it very useful for developing outlines for content. It's a good way to take all this sort of content up to this point and say, well, what are the basics of the paragraphs of a 7-paragraph article on this? What do we think the main points of this subject matter are? But what we're not finding it useful for, that I think for a moment everyone thought it would be the easy button for, is simply replacing content production with ChatGPT. In that instance, we're not finding it useful, and I think this is going to apply differently for ChatGPT 4 over 3, but I think the problems are still there. I think, and this gets into sort of what I believe about the way the universe works. Right now, if we increase the amount of automation that's happening by using tools like ChatGPT, there's, because of the way things work, going to be an increasing human use of content review workflows, et cetera, to inform the algorithm on the other side of the equation. Google has been adding people to train their AI to understand if content is actually unique and valuable. And this is a natural offset to AI tools being used to pump out lots more content. So the thing that I believe about the universe is, two things. One is investment in SEO goes up year after year. There's never been any silver bullet that just defeated the concept of we want to be more prominent on the internet. So we look at these tools throughout 20 years of strong competitive search engine marketing, and we don't really have anything that's ever killed organic as a whole. So number one, these things always generate more opportunities than they take away. You look at any kind of automation throughout history, not just internet marketing history, but all of history. It never has the effect of leading us to an apocalyptic doomsday of everyone sitting in their Wall-E space station recliner eating big gulps. It's always competitive. And until we lock down and outlaw competition, there will always be people like me who will work two jobs while everybody else is happy to work one. We're not going away. We are the entrepreneurs. So nothing takes away drive and productivity among the human race. It just gets redirected and reshuffled and reordered. So I don't think it's going to kill anything like out of hand. The other thing that I think is true about the way the universe works is Google rides. They're the kid on the playground who's on the seesaw, but they're not sitting on one end of it. They're standing in the middle. And you're not supposed to stand on the seesaw, but they're that kid standing and balancing on 2 feet and keeping a seesaw balanced. What they're balancing is paid search ad sales and the perception that they are the best source to take a look at everything on the internet with organic search results. They have to protect that largest revenue stream of theirs, at least to the point of perception, in order to maintain their core business as one of the largest technology companies in existence. So they're balancing and protecting the perception of that organic internet being available so that they can sell the ads. They have to offer the white pages for free. They make their money on the yellow pages. And so that's not going away. Google's not just going to dismiss out of hand their biggest revenue stream just because it gets easier for SEO people to respin some crappy article from up to 2021. So yeah, I think the core fundamentals of SEO are built into the internet right now in a way that's not going away as easily as we all fear. And I think that just means for the rest of us, this is a new tool set. So we've been testing and using AI actively for 6 months now. We've done our own tests and decided where we think it's useful. And so we're actively using it, but we haven't found it useful in any of the ways that would have made an English major jump off of the Korean War Vets Bridge in Nashville.
Oh, that's a great answer. I like how you say that the authority or the drive doesn't get taken away, things just get reordered. That's a really good way to think about it. This is a new tool in the toolbox now that can be used for good. I wonder how, so, when I have worked just very lightly in SEO, not I'm in my infancy compared to I'm sure what you know, but just using tools like SEMrush and helping generate keywords and Google Keyword Generator and some of these tools that exist. How have you noticed a difference in what they are churning out versus like what a Chat GPT can churn out? Or like, is one replacing the other, or are they still being used simultaneously?
Yeah, that's great. I think they work hand in hand. I would say hand in hand. That's not really true. They work hand in glove. Um, the one accentuates and makes more valuable the other. Um, the tools are good for developing rote, sort of shallow content around subject matter. And it's a good way to use keyword research that's been done to increase the application of keywords to a little bit of content. But the tools are not, neither set of tools is good at coming up with something to say that's actually interesting to people. When you read this stuff, it's not like you're even reading like a Wikipedia article where there's some passion and some argumentation being worked out, and you can sort of read it and feel the argument that's been happening. It's a little bit more like, all bread, no meat, cheese, no mustard. And so, having the blandness that a predictive language model can generate is never going to be adequate to work with humans because that's not what it's doing. And so, same thing with keyword tools. You really can't automate the step of measuring intent in a particular keyword. We always end up with a human review to say the person searching for this actually is looking for what we're offering. It's so complex and so contextual that you really have to have a manual review of keyword data. So I think both of these tools get about 80% of the way of helping us achieve some things that are really important that we do in SEO, but neither of them is easy to use without the other going forward, and neither of them gets it all the way there without a person either. And so, yeah, I think they're just tools that work together and complement each other. And back to how you opened, I don't know that that I know more about SEO than you do. I think my strength has always been sort of accumulating people who knew more than I do. I don't really consider myself the expert. I just am good at talking about stuff.
Well, you're certainly speaking about it eloquently. This is really interesting how it's all pairing together.
Yeah, and I love your analogies too. It's just it kind of helps put it in a better perspective. And you talk about there always being a human element because I've been using ChatGPT and I've been using Google's Bard. Yeah, I do find that as far as predictive language models go, ChatGPT does perform a bit better. But everything's in beta right now. Everything's testing. Everything's research phases. But I think there is this obviousness to using that tool to where you cannot. I mean, they've all got the clipboard buttons on these tools that you can just clip what it generated and throw it somewhere. Yeah, I think that you would likely agree that doing that would almost always be a mistake because it's when you read, like I read something the other day that a guy put in a Word document and I was like, hey, nice use of ChatGPT, just because you can tell how it's building out those responses. And not that I was saying it in a negative way, because I do think what you said is it's really valuable tool to use to create outlines and to create drafts and to just to give you something to work off of. But without that human element to adjust things, I come from a background in sales, and I know you have a lot of experience with that as well, that the way you speak to somebody is so crucial and so important. And that I think that is one place that AI is going to take a very long time to get to, is to be able to have these conversions and to be able to talk to people like a human will, and for people not to just spot it instantly that they were using a tool. So
Yeah, that's how I see it. No, that's how I see it. So we're not sort of head in the sand and saying these tools don't matter. What we're saying is these tools are going to change everything, but none of it is changing the value of unique, relevant, personal, human perspective applied to subject matter. So I'm expecting social media content and video content and podcast content to rise in importance as SEO factors. And, just like the Panda update from 12, 14 years ago, I'm expecting, content that feels duplicate or feels language, predictive language generated. I think all that stuff's just going to struggle. And so I don't know. We have these things that come up. 6 months ago, everybody's going nuts about go high level. Well, when everybody has go high level, sure, you can kill email for a while, but you're not necessarily going to increase your business performance. So, yeah, these things come and go, and they become very terrifying for everyone. They turn out to be more devastating than we expected, but not in the same ways that we thought. So, I think ChatGPT is a killer app against search engines, not against working in search engines.
no, I think that's great. Somebody clip that because that's a good little like one liner quote there. But yeah, that brings up some good points. And so I mentioned on some pre calls that, and you mentioned as well that you love kind of the myth busting side of things. And I think that a few things you just said kind of hint at some myths that maybe people have been saying. And a lot of it seems to be coming from these AI influencers, people that want to get noticed for their knowledge of AI. And I love that. I think influencers are great, but I do think that some of their stuff might be leaning more towards the myth side than it is factual. So I wanted to talk about a couple of things. You did mention there's more of a shift maybe towards, social media advertisement. But some people are saying that digital marketing today should be all about social media. And I think that alienates a couple of things that have always been, successful. One of those being email marketing. So just out of curiosity, people saying that digital marketing is all about social media. What's your take on that, Michael?
Yeah, I think everybody kind of we don't like to admit it, but we're all kind of shiny object syndrome susceptible. And so I think social media, these channels, these big channels, they come onto the scene and they have this big hoopla, and then they die down for a while, and then they come back, and some of them make it, and some of them don't. But podcasting followed a similar pattern. And so, podcasters, everybody went nuts for podcasting. It was like a huge thing. And then it kind of died off for 5, 7 years. And then now it's come back in a way that everyone's like, oh, this is obviously one of the foundation stones of the universe. Well, how does that happen? How does that adjustment happen? There's always kind of a shockwave. I think social media is in a similar place. I think there was a shockwave of everyone being super focused on it, super excited, and inevitably tasking being the face of the company on social media channels to some intern who's working their way through college. And it was like, okay, you don't get it yet. You don't understand this. And then we kind of went through a decline where everyone was sort of inoculated and said, oh, we didn't get anything out of it. We're not doing that anymore. And now it's like, no, it's real. It's not going away. It's a foundation stone. Where we found the most, so yeah, we think social media is core, it's central, it's part of the main one of the main slices of the pie for managing digital presence across the board. However, we take a different approach to content strategy such that publishing to social media isn't an end in itself. It's part of a larger picture that extends the brand and the interactions to the places where those are the formats of the interactions. So social media is really good, but if you don't have a content strategy that also connects with your website, search engine indexes, your video strategy. If you're not thinking about the larger content strategy and letting social flow out of that, it's always going to feel shallow and self-serving, and miss out. And so, yeah, I think when it has a good connection to the bigger strategy, it's absolutely one of the most important things. But I wouldn't seed ground in email or video or SEO just for social. And so a lot of conversations we have, we're load balancing back to other channels away from somebody who thinks social is something they're finally ready to do in a big way.
So maybe we need to bring back MySpace, is what you're saying.
I think have a full spectrum approach to SEO, paid advertising, email, multimedia content. If I had to simplify the internet down to those, I would be okay. I could get any campaign to yield what it needs to, and and have a good result if I at least could cover those bases.
Okay. So what would you say? So you just talked a little bit about the diversification of some of your efforts, kind of where all your eggs should be. But also, so what do you say to people when they think, we need like one big effort with digital marketing and then we'll see some residual effects. We don't need to keep doing this. What's your answer to that?
We break down the different ways they could use that budget and show them the return on investment of their different strategies. And to Joey's point earlier about social media is everything, I think sometimes we have to lower expectations for a social only strategy and start with an SEO program, but use the social publishing as an add on that doesn't carry as much cost, and let search engine traction carry more of the load of getting more of the business results. And so, yeah, I think that load balancing is the key, and just making sure not to put too much emphasis on something that by itself is not typically a strong lead driver just on its own. But yeah, I think when the budget's there I mean, at the end of the day, for us, it's always about delivering a success. And if there's a success, we can add on. And so sometimes we'll sort of say, hey, that's good, but we don't want to start with that. We want to get this going first, get this yielding. Because, if we do really well in social, but the website's terrible and people go look at the website and it hurts that conversion path, then that's not helping them either. So yeah, there are a lot of those discussions. And that's, I think, one of the biggest parts that we get into in collaborative or education oriented sales is understanding the return on investment is available to them with these different approaches and making our best recommendation. That's what people look to us to help them decide.
Gotcha. Being able to show value and ROI right from the start. So for so long, back in the kind of pre-digital era of marketing, which was it ever pre-digital? I guess it was at one point, but it was so much harder to draw a line between a result and an effort. And now it's so much easier. So I guess in terms of like putting content out there, as far as another myth to dispel, if you put content out there, that's enough. There used to, the piece I was going to ask you about is the old adage, content is king. What do you say to that with people?
Wow, that's an interesting little nugget. Yeah, I think content was king was a way for everyone to say we've discovered the value of owning our own placement in search engines because content is accretive and doing some of it steadily every month over the course of time means that you can build up an asset, a business asset that you own with search engine placement. So I think that at the time that content was king, it was really king because everyone was discovering that it had a compounding benefit over advertising. And so I think that's still true, but now I would argue that that's 50% of the message for content. I would say content with a robust publishing strategy is king. For example, we get really excited about when we can arrange a content strategy so that the publishing footprint at the end of the pipe is outsized compared to the amount of production effort to produce the content. For us at GoEpps, an example of how we do this, and I think we've been innovative in this area. I think other folks are catching up and starting to evolve to the same destination that we have organically. I don't think anybody's gotten this idea from us, but it's just kind of a natural thing. But we'll plan a video podcast and produce episodes that can be clipped into clips. And then those clips can be playlisted. And so then we get not only a podcast with, say 20-minute audio segments, we get a video podcast. We also get a YouTube strategy with clipping playlisting. We also get little soundbite clips where we answer one question in 3 minutes that can be pulled out as a clip and loaded to our email newsletter. Then we can also promote that clip on our social channels. So I think smarter publishing and being more strategic before the record button is hit is probably what's different now. And that's where the front edge of the wave is with content. I still think content strategy is king, but I would say queen is the publishing.
That's a great answer. I just wrote down a little note for our podcast. We should totally be doing that.
I agree with that because I think that content without a strategy, and maybe it just seems elementary, but when I was doing the research, a lot of people were saying like you've got to have just consistent content out there, not necessarily a ton of content, but consistent content as far as your timing. But they weren't really talking about the consistency with the message and the branding and what you were just talking about, Michael, that I think was really valuable. And so while I think that the myth of if I put content out there, that's enough, there is a little bit of truth to that. But I think that plus what you said and having, a good publishing strategy is super valuable. So I got one more question because we're basically at the end here, and I want to tie it all together. That we've talked a lot about AI, we've talked a lot about digital marketing, and I know you've dispelled some of the rumors that tools like ChatGPT are not going to come in and steal people's job. They are going to come in and take that human element and really accelerate what we can do after probably some of that shiny new object fades. I think you're right. It will go down and then there will be a resurgence once people get more comfortable with the tool. But with all the new AI tools coming out every day and every week, what do you think in terms of business, in terms of digital marketing, is not going to change in the way we operate?
Yeah, I think that the one big thing that's not going to change is that companies are still going to have to work like publishers to protect and build their prominence on the internet. Now, what may change is some of the technical dots being connected between what we emphasize one year to the next, whether it's more of a focus on getting our videos out into social or more of an offsite strategy versus an onsite, or more of a client testimonials versus getting our flow of reviews handled properly through reputation management. All this stuff moves around all the time, but what we're forgetting when we focus so much on how it's moving around like a bubble under a surface, is that at one point in time, companies didn't think this was their problem to deal with. The fact that they've all got to be writing a magazine about themselves all the time and putting it everywhere, and they've got to have videos and pictures from job sites and customers talking on camera about getting a mole removed. Companies didn't expect any of this 20 years ago. This made everyone into a publisher, a content producer and publisher. And that really hasn't changed in 20 years. So as soon as we got a graphic interface to search for local businesses, every business became a publisher permanently. And that just hasn't changed. And so having something to say, being unique, having a unique voice in the world means that you have unique products and services to offer. So being able to find that voice and get it out there, it's not changed. And that's one of the larger trends that I think is permanent about the internet, and very shocking if you take a step back and think about it.
That's great. That's really insightful. I was just jotting down a bunch of you're good with the sound bites there.
Yes, I was thinking the same thing. I was like, this guy's got a lot of good one-liners.
clip them and post them. Yeah, clip them and post them. That's good.
Yeah, exactly. Well, just as we close out here, Michael, are there any things that you'd like to promote out there? Channels you'd like folks to follow along with? I know you've got your new podcast.
Yes. I would love to hear from people who get this and just connect on LinkedIn. And we're doing digital marketing stuff, so check us out. For the most part, we just love to hear that any of this was useful, and what people like hearing about from these sorts of tech marketing community podcasts, so that we're launching a new podcast for ourselves. We've been doing one under our product brand, Dodgeball Marketing. We're this year switching over to more of an interview-based format, and going to brand it under GoEpps for the first time. The first time we've had a GoEpps podcast. So really excited. So would love to hear from people about guests that they want to hear on the Atiba podcast, and then hear them again on the GoEpps podcast. So those sorts of interactions are really valuable for us. Just hearing people share their thoughts about what they got out of this would be the number one thing.
That's awesome. Okay, great. Well, we'll definitely make sure we've got a link to your LinkedIn, Dodgeball Marketing, the website, all that in the show notes. So Michael Epps Utley, thank you so much for joining us today. We really enjoyed this.
Awesome. Thank you. And our logo is the narwhal. So here's a narwhal for the day. I promised myself I'd get that on camera. That's it.
Awesome. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you all. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Half Geek Half Human podcast. Make sure to follow the Half Geek Half Human podcast on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. We'll see you next time.
You've been listening to Half Geek Half Human.